Thanks, Trish. Hi, catch-up crew.
How are your days, Bracken and Carmen? How are you folks doing?
I had a very lovely visit in Sheffield, and I got to see baby Ash, and I got to feed baby Ash, and he was a delight, a screamy delight. And Malcolm and I took him out for a walk, and Malcolm had him in the sling, and he and I were just like walking past other people who had babies and being like, our baby is better than their baby. Yeah. He was better than any of the other babies. We climbed a hill, a big old hill. That was a lot of fun. I was very unhappy halfway through it. I was like, my body is moving around. What the fuck is this shit? Exercise? No, thank you. But I got over it eventually when we got to the top of the hill. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what the name of the place was. It's like at this plateau. There's like this plateau of mountains in the Peak District. I'll find it later, but it was really beautiful. We walked down through this like ravine that had like this trickle of water that finally turned into like a big river, and we ended up swimming, like having a wee dunk in the river and a little bit of wild swimming. And then Megan and her partner David got me drunk on some very nice Polish like mead halfway down the mountain, and I was like bounding home from rock to rock and having a great time at that point. It's a lot easier downhill.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, it sounds like such a great time. I'm so glad you got to catch Megan while she's here.
I had an honest to God holiday.
You did?
It was really nice.
You had a holiday with friends.
I had a holiday with friends. Yeah, it was really lovely. Carmen, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing laundry because I forgot that I don't have a clean uniform for work tomorrow, and I'm very annoyed at myself. But yeah, I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling really tired this week. I don't know why. But in general, good. You know, I don't have this constant feeling of doom and despair anymore. So I feel alive again.
Yay! Not feeling constant doom. Woo!
That's fantastic. Have you started your new job yet?
Shit, isn't it?
A little bit.
No, I start next Friday, next week.
Oh, it's so soon. How are you feeling about it? Are you still feeling excited?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I was hanging out with babies today at my work. I'm with the preschoolers. And it was so cute. I was like, how am I going to do this like every day? I'm going to be overwhelmed by cuteness constantly. Her life.
I think they get annoying eventually. So, I mean, they don't get less cute.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it.
We've lost a Carmen.
We have lost a Carmen.
Recording in progress.
Hi, Tara.
Hi, Tara.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Oh, good. I'm just gonna like quickly plug my headphones in so that how does it?
Oh, Carmen's back.
Oh, I was like wondering, who's that? Who can I hear?
Oh, I see.
I love how many Storytime kiddos there are. It's really nice. I like this. And I like that people are getting to see some of them.
Yeah. I think that Rory and I are actually going back to spend some more time with Lisa and Jonas and Ash mid-August.
Oh, nice. That'll
Rory
be
gets
so good.
baby time because Rory loves babies and he just wants to like hang out with them in the same way as he wants to hang out with cool dogs. Just be
Yeah,
like,
that's
"You wanna do
relatable.
this? Let's go do this. Cool."
I can imagine Rory and babies being a good combination.
Yeah, I've not seen it before. I don't know how to do baby, so
Yeah.
I think with a combination of Lisa and Jonas and Rory, they will show me how to do baby, change the diaper, do the potty, feed the food, do the bouncing, rocking thing, going for walks, etc., etc. Trying to make the child stop screaming.
I mean, you do that with yourself as well, right? It's just the same.
I feel like, yeah, I can scream internally, and I know that I can like look after myself when I'm screaming internally. It's just that when there's an external noise, like a baby is not something that you can just put down in a room and close the door on, you know, like, okay, that noise is
You do
over
that
there,
to
so I can take.
Is that how you deal with your emotions?
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you that I deliberately didn't learn how to change? Oh, sorry. What was that, Carmen?
Oh, nothing. I was just making a joke that, you know, I do that too.
Yeah. So did I ever tell you that I deliberately did not learn how to change a diaper until my niece was like almost 2 because I didn't want anyone to leave me alone with their kid? Like, I can never be fully responsible if I don't know how to change a diaper. Just no one will leave me alone with the kid. And then, of course, there was a moment when my sister was in a bind and she was like, it's fine. It's mostly going to be nap time. She only wears a diaper for nap time at this point. Like, you're good. It's going to be fine. You'll be okay. I'll be back at 2 o'clock. And I was like, okay, this is going to be fine.
I
And
think
it
I
didn't.
understand that.
Yeah.
Like, it's a scary thing, having all that responsibility.
Yeah, and then they tell you it'll be fine, and they have disgusting poop.
I guess it was our
So yeah, just gross poop. It was not a fun time. It did happen. They're like, you'll be fine, and my niece was like, why are you coughing? And I was like, yeah, gagging. I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, I feel like I've dealt with enough different animal poops in my time that I'm probably going to be fine with the cleaning of human poop. I think it's
That's
mostly
fair.
the screaming. And the
Fair.
yeah.
Yeah, it is very upsetting,
Yeah.
especially when, you know, they can't communicate, they can't tell you what's wrong, and you're like, oh, please, I just want to make you happy.
I just want to make you happy. Just a sec.
Yeah, I pretty much just bounce them, see if they want food, and play peekaboo. I like have my go-to things, and if none of those work, I'm like, here you go. I don't know what's going on with your kid. Yeah. I am glad that I had nieces and nephews to learn some of that stuff with, so that when I'm around friends' kids, eventually I'm not going to be totally clueless on how to kid.
How to kid.
How to kid. Hey, Bracken.
Hey, Larry.
Is it story time? Sorry, I got distracted talking about babies and kids and stuff.
Story time. Time for story. Y'all ready for a story? Do you want a recap? Okay, so Felicity is in Stuttgart. She's met her hero Alexander Platt, and he has been like, oh, I can see that you have some things about you. Maybe I'll take you on like later on and we can talk about it at some point. And also Sim, the sexy pirate lady who she arrived with, has stolen something from Joanna's bedroom, and so Felicity tells Joanna and shows the seal of the letter that was stolen, and it said something Zurich on it, which is very, mysterious. So.
And that's where they're going on their honeymoon, right? To Zurich?
Yes, that was the plan, yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Are you sitting comfortably? And I'll begin. Joanna disappears almost as soon as the china is broken, and I don't dare approach Dr. Platt. If she told him about Sim, and who could blame her, to assure there was no chance of me entering their lives after I've gone on and on about how I had put her in danger just to meet Platt, any hope I had of working with him or any connections he might have provided will be snuffed. He may be a rebel in the operating room, but I imagine offering his new bride up to a robber will put a permanent tarnish on a relationship. I return to my room to find Sim's knapsack gone, which is part relief, part dread, because with her goes my way back to England. I wrangle myself out of my dress, more rip myself out, for it's already beyond saving, and change into the weathered tartan skirt and bodice I arrived in. There's no point in staying for the wedding now. Joanna will want nothing to do with me. She'll likely turn Platt against me. I'm not certain how I'll travel back to England. Perhaps on credit, then show up on Callum's doorstep and accept his proposal so long as he takes on the massive debt I have mustered in returning to him. Perhaps I'll go back to London and try again. Perhaps I should take up factory work and hope someone's foot gets sucked into a machine occasionally and I have the chance to practice whatever I've spent so much time studying. Perhaps I should go back to my parents, tail tucked, and give it all up. But it feels like living without a heart. Until now I was chasing something, no matter how far in the distance it was. But now my only choice is going back. And going back means resigning myself to a life without work, without study or purpose. And what kind of life is that? Perhaps, like waking up with a lamp in the dark, I must move forward before I am able to see the next bend in the road. But for now, I pack my things, then sit on the bed and wait for the sun to pearl along the horizon, feeling trapped within a shrinking box in an indifferent universe. The first noise I hear does not come from the house raising its head in preparation for a wedding, but rather from the grounds outside. Someone is whistling, then a child's voice cries in German, "Come on, doggy, run!" I stand and cross to the window. The sky is peach-coloured outside my window, the pine trees dark blades in silhouette against it. On the lawn, blanketed in snow, still studded with flecks of broken china, a tiny girl with shocking blonde hair and enormous ears is running circles around Max, who seems to have deflated. So flat is he lying on the ground. I wonder suddenly if it's my fault he got out. Perhaps I didn't shut Joanna's door properly last night and poor Max had been loping around the grounds in the dark. I let myself out of my room, then dart down the stairs in my slippers and out onto the veranda, stopping upon the last step so I don't wet my toes. "Max!" I call, and his head shoots up, spraying snow off his ears. The girl stops running and stares at me, then throws her hands at the beastie as though in presentation. "I've brought the dog," she says in German. "Money, please." "Did he get out?" I ask, making a tentative crossing of the snowy lawn toward her. My slippers, made for ladylike treads across the carpet, are soaked by the time I reach her, but there is no chance the dog will be moved by this girl as delicate as a snowflake. The girl puts her hand atop Max's enormous head, giving him a two-fingered stroke between the eyes. "No, the lady at the carriage stop in Stuttgart gave me a cruiser and said if I brought the dog back to the Pink House, someone would give me another. But he looked so sad, I thought he might want to play." I'm not sure how this small creature got Max anywhere, particularly when she hooks a hand around his bow and tries to pull him over to me. She seems to be throwing her whole weight into the act, and he barely budges. Stuttgart is at least 2 miles of playing carrot and stick with this creature away. I suddenly realize I have entirely missed the key word of her statement. Sorry, what lady? The lady from the pink house in the country. They wouldn't let me bring the dog on the diligence, so she said you could give me a... I don't have a coin for you, I interrupt. You can go ask around the servant door if you want payment. As the girl prances off through the yard, I bend down and stroke Max on the head. What were you doing in Stuttgart? You should be upstairs with Joanna getting dressed up for the big day. He snort whines, expelling a puff of frozen slobber from his jowls, and nudges his face into my skirt. His black lips pull against my knee. Come on, let's go find her. I drag him up by the loose skin around his neck. I swear I lose sight of my hand in all the fur and folds, and pull him back into the house, then up the stairs towards Joanna's room. He's a reluctant companion, whining and dragging his massive paws and offering such passive resistance that I'm winded by the time we reach the door to Joanna's apartments. Max shakes himself off, and I'm drenched in a combination of the snow thrown from his fur and long ribbons of slobber. I swear some fly off and adhere to the ceiling, where they cling like rock formations in a cave. Hunched over with the dog cuffed under one arm, my hair in my face and most of me soaked in muddy snow, I'm a proper vagrant when I knock on Joanna's bedroom door. Joanna! I can feel the sleeves of my dress slowly soaking as Max leaks saliva into it. Joanna, I've got Max. I think he got out. No answer. I knock again, harder this time. Joanna? I give a tentative push on the door and it swings open. Max presses his massive forehead into the back of my knees like he's trying to hide, but instead ends up nudging me into the room. It's empty. Her wedding dress is hanging unworn, her bed made, and the fire cold, unstoked since the night previous. Max galumps in ahead of me, makes a slow heft of his girth onto the bed, and turns around 3 times before flopping down. I take a few more steps inside. Joanna, I call, though it's obvious she isn't here. The washroom is dark, the essential items of her toilette gone, and the bed sheets cold, but where Max has already begun to sink into them. Joanna is gone. Not just gone, but seemingly not here at all last night. I have to tell someone. It will delay my own departure, but there's a whole wedding party about to assemble in her honour. A garden full of flowers being arranged below stairs, a chapel full of guests who will be left staring at an empty aisle. Not to mention the humiliation for the groom to be standing at the altar, waiting and waiting and waiting, only to find his bride had vanished. I have to tell Dr. Platt. I'm fairly certain I know which room is his, though the first door I knock upon is answered by the deaf relative I sat beside at my first dinner. I apologise and move on to the next, rapping upon it so hard my knuckles smart. Dr. Platt answers in a banyan and cap, his eyes bloodshot. Miss Montague. He scrubs a hand against his face. It's early. Joanna's gone, I blurt out. He blinks hard several times, like he's trying to translate my words from a language of which he only knows a few words. What? Her room is empty, and there's a girl in the yard who brought Max and said that she was given a coin by a woman getting on a diligence to bring him back to the house. Come inside. He ushers me into the room, closing the door behind us. Cleanliness is clearly not a prominent water feature in the courtyard of his life, as he seems to have nothing in his wardrobe and everything upon the floor. There are sets of dishes with dried crusts of food stacked on a table by the fire, which he pulls a chair from and offers me. He retrieves his snuff box from the nightstand before pulling up a stool for himself. Do you need a drink? He asks, and I shake my head. Though even sitting down, I am unable to be still, my knee bouncing up and down. Tell me slowly now, from the beginning. When I'm finished explaining, he asks, are you certain she's gone? She may be elsewhere in the house. Did you check? She didn't sleep in her bed last night, I interrupt. It was still made. The fire was cold. Things were missing from her dressing room. Did the child say where the diligence was headed? I shake my head. Do you know where she would have gone, or why? My mind flits briefly to the night before, the letter clutched between us and Joanna, furious and serious and entirely not herself. But there's no proof that was due to anything other than her learning that I had set her up to be robbed. No, sir. He nods, tugging the sash on his banyan tighter. I'll have the staff search the house and grounds to be certain, and alert her uncle. Let me dress, and then you and I can go to Stuttgart and see if we can find out where she's gone. Platt sends the butler to the chapel to let the priest know the service may be delayed, while I do my best to shake off the bridal attendants beginning to assemble in the parlour. By the time Platt and I depart from Stuttgart, Joanna's uncle and the groundskeeper have hunting dogs on leads, ready to launch a search in the woods that frame the house. Platt and I take a carriage from the house to the diligence stop in the city, where the clerk confirms that a young woman and her giant dog arrived early this morning, seeking a departure. However, while the dog was sent back to the house with the girl due to not fitting comfortably inside the carriage, Joanna got herself on the first southbound coach this morning from Frankfurt to Genoa. The clerk counts out the next stops for us on his fingers. Rottenburg, Abstadt, Memmingen, Ravensburg, Schaffhausen, Zurich. Zurich. I can see it on the seal of the letter I tore from Sim. Did Joanna tell Platt about Sim? Did it matter at all to her? Did she dismiss it when he interrupted us because it didn't matter or because she didn't want him to know? Do I have a hand in her sudden departure? Or is it just a severe manifestation of nerves before a wedding and my betrayal was just an enormous coincidence? What were you thinking, Joanna? Outside the travel office, Platt slaps his gloves against his hands absently, blowing a long, milky breath into the air before he declares, I'm going to send word to the chapel that we're postponing the ceremony, and then follow the route. See if I can't catch up with the diligence or find her at any of the stops. She can't have gone far. She'll miss all the comforts she's used to within the day. I'm not certain he's right about that. Joanna Hoffman may seem like a girl who would be out of her depth in a mud puddle, but I don't think she'd run without a plan. Or at the least, a very good reason, though I can't fathom what that might be. I start, but falter when he looks at me. His gaze is hawk sharp, and the chance of the letter I intercepted being in any way tied to her flight is so thin it feels likely to snap as soon as it's tested. I take a deep breath. She may be heading to Zurich. What makes you think that? He asks. Last night I caught my maid robbing her. She tried to take a letter, and the seal was from Zurich. A letter? Do you have it with you? I shake my head. Do you remember anything about it? Kunstkammerstaub. That was on the seal. I tried so badly over the pronunciation I blush, suddenly feeling foolish not just for my poor German, but also for thinking this was worth mentioning. It may be nothing. Or perhaps not. He rubs a hand over his chin. He hasn't shaved and his cheeks are peppered with coarse stubble. We should go to Zurich. I've a house rented there for our honeymoon, so at least we'll have somewhere to set up. We? I repeat. Ah, yes. He tucks his hands into his coat pockets with a smile. I was going to speak to you of this last night, but we never found each other. I gave quite a lot of thought to how I might be of best use to you, and I can certainly find space for you on my expedition staff. It's like the whole world shifts. The lights get brighter, the snow whiter, the sky glacier blue. The bitter wind clattering shop signs against their chains quiets. For one quiet moment the world is still, and it is mine. My legs feel firmly planted under me for the first time in years, maybe my whole life. Nothing has been ruined, no rift in the earth opened between me and the greatest living physician. I let out the damning details of how Sim got into their house, but either he didn't notice or didn't care. He still wants me. Platt pulls his scarf up over his nose, squinting down the street and seemingly oblivious to the fact that in one sentence he has given me a chance I would have cut off my own feet and eaten them raw for. Though this damn expedition will never get off the ground if we can't find Miss Hoffman. The wind picks back up, and a spray of muddy snow splatters across the hem of my dress as a passing carriage strikes a rut. Why not? He's pulled out his snuff box and tipped a thimbleful onto the back of his hand, shielding it from the wind with a cupped palm. But he pauses, eyes flickering to me. Then he says, "What sort of man would leave the country while his fiancée is missing?" He takes a snort and shakes his head a few times. "Please come. You're her friend. She trusts you. Whatever has inspired this hysteria, perhaps you can talk her down from it. Miss Montague, I need your help." It was not quite the context in which I had imagined Alexander Platt would ask me for my help. In my fantasies, it was from the other side of an operating table, in a time of crisis, with everyone panicking over a tangled intestine no one could unravel until I stepped in. But I'll take whatever scraps I'm thrown, no matter how tired I am of not having a seat at the table. "Let's find Joanna," I say. Platt wastes no time on public transport. He hires us a carriage and a driver and foots every bill for accommodations, which is a vast improvement upon my original plan of limping back to England by way of public coaches and sleeping at the sheltered stops along the way. And though I am not particularly fussy and have done my share of sleeping in open fields with only my own 2 arms to pillow my head, I prefer beds and roofs and heated foot warmers in an enclosed carriage when they are made available to me. Platt is a gentleman. He doesn't sit on the same side of the bench as I do and lets me ride forward while he sits with his back to the coachman. He takes quite a lot more snuff than I have ever seen a man ingest, and I lived with Monty, though of all his vices, Monty was never one for snuff. Platt snorts it like clockwork, a deep inhale through the nose every quarter hour. And when we stop for the night, he leaves our inn and ventures out into the frigid winter to purchase more. The next morning over breakfast he adds laudanum to his coffee and complains of the poor quality of tobacco to be found in this town. It reminds me of my brother, who, before our tour, would take brandy in the mornings after a night drinking himself sick in the clubs, smelled of whiskey more often than aftershave, and who, had he ever duelled, he would likely have been saved from a fatal bullet by the flask in his breast pocket. I know now why. After years of abuse at the hands of our father, he had felt himself unable to experience the world sober. It makes me wonder what demons Alexander Platt keeps barricaded away with that small box of shimmering powder. I am not certain how to speak to him, and so at first we do very little of that. I want to ask him everything, about his work, his research, the wards he's walked and the ships he's sailed on, what he thinks about Robert Hooke's presentation of artificial respiration before the Royal Society, whether he agrees with Archibald Pitcairn that fevers are best cured by evacuating medicines, because that has always seemed overly simplistic to me. But none of this seems appropriate to ask a man whose bride had fled at the altar, even if he is one's hero. But one can only spend so long bookless in the company of another man, another human, before one feels compelled to make conversation, particularly when one of those humans has just offered the other an opportunity that has her stoked as a just-fed fire. So about the position. I say it so fast and with so little grace that he looks up from notations he's been making in a small book with a frown. Pardon me? I swallow. I was hoping, maybe, you can tell me more about the sort of work I'll be doing for you. Work? He repeats. The position with your expedition. Oh, of course. He closes his book around the pencil, marking his place. While I'm away in the Barbary States, it would be helpful to have someone at my office in London to keep track of my correspondence and finances, transcribe notations sent from abroad. I can't pay you much, unfortunately, but you know how these things are, always so short on funds. I don't know, actually. I'm not sure what things he's referring to. Medicine or expeditions or any position that he's held by, or any position that's held by a woman. So I'd be your secretary, I say. Assistant, he corrects. When I don't reply, he adds, you look disappointed. It's not quite what I had in mind, I say, as tactful as a response as I can muster. I was hoping for something more practical. He's fishing in his jacket again, and I expect to see the snuff box, but instead it's a handkerchief. He blows his nose, then, when he finds me still silent, laughs. What more would you want? I'd like to study, I reply, and work, not just take notes from someone who is. He swipes a thumb over his chin, then folds his handkerchief with such precision it makes me want to scoot away from him, though there's nowhere to go in this carriage. Miss Montague, he says, let me be clear about something. You'll not be given many chances for employment in this field because of the inferiority of your sex. I'm kind enough to offer you this when most physicians wouldn't entertain the idea of a woman in their office managing their research. This is not an opportunity you'll be offered again from anyone. It is a blunt battering ram of a tone, the sort that makes me suddenly aware that it is just the two of us in this small space on this empty country road. He leans back, kicking one foot up on the opposite knee with such grandness that his toe knocks into my shin. Might I suggest some gratitude? It's far more becoming. I'm sorry, I say, and I hate that I'm apologizing to him when it is he who kicked me, he who has made me feel like I'm in the wrong for daring to ask something, not even something, for anything. He has me apologizing for asking for the minimum that is granted to most men. You needn't apologize for ambition, he says, flipping his book open again and taking up his pencil. Just know that most men will find it unseemly in a woman. I turn away from him and stare out the window, watching the white countryside pass us by and trying to resist the urge to open the door, step out onto the road and make my own way rather than spend a minute longer in this coach. Once we get to Zurich, he says, and his voice feels floating and far away. You'll help me find Joanna, won't you, Felicity? Yes, sir, I reply. And the conversation between my hero, your idol, your favourite doctor, I remind myself over and over in time with the clattering carriage wheels, whittles into nothing. Zurich. The house in Zurich is ready for us when we arrive. Well, not us. Joanna and Platt. It's a modest townhouse near the shore of the lake, not so close that you can hear the port, but not so far away as to be overly fashionable. The staff is just a cook, a housekeeper, and a valet, who all do admirable jobs of hiding their surprise when Dr. Platt introduces me as Miss Montague rather than Mrs. Platt. We arrive late in the evening, the street lamps already glowing and the lake a glassy reflection of the sky. The housekeeper takes me up to my room, brings me supper on a tray and heats coals for my bed warmer before leaving me to sleep. I'm flattened from the travelling, but the house keeps me awake. Perhaps it is just being unaccustomed to strange sounds of a strange place, and a strange city as well. Perhaps it's the way that I can hear Dr. Platt in the sitting room below me, his footsteps on the floorboards, the clink of a decanter against the rim of a glass, more times than seems advisable. I drift off without realising it, but I'm woken abruptly by the sound of my bedroom door opening and the faint beam of a lantern being unsheathed, which just disappears almost at once. There are a few rough footsteps, then my bedroom door bangs shut, and an unfamiliar male voice asks in English, "Who is that?" "Keep your voice down," Platt hisses. "God, you didn't have to barge in." "I knew you were lying. I knew it." "I didn't lie. That's not your wife, Alex." I don't move, debating whether they'll be back, whether it is wiser for me to continue to feign sleep or to bolt suddenly awake. The intensity of their voices, and that they are two men and I a woman alone, sits deep in my bones like a bad fever. "So where is Mrs. Platt?" The stranger's voice asks. Farther away now. The stairs creak beneath their feet. Their voices peter out as they get farther down the stairs. I sit up, straining to hear. I am no dropper of Eve's, but it seems in my best interests, and Joanna's, to know what is being said about us behind closed doors. Or rather, in the hallways outside them. I scramble out of bed and to the door, then ease myself out as quietly as possible and glide sock-footed to the top of the stairs. From that vantage point I can see across the entryway and into a sliver of the sitting room, where they've taken up residence. From where he's seated on the couch, Platt's shoulder and the back of his head are barely visible. "In the city somewhere," he's saying. "She's also not Mrs. Platt yet." "Dear God, Alex, I thought you could handle this." I am handling it." "What was wrong with taking her to Poland?" the stranger asks. His accent is English with a crisp precision that reeks of hunting parties in Cambridge classrooms. "She would have suspected a proposition of elopement," Platt starts, but the man cuts him off. What do you do if she gets there before you?" "Doesn't matter. They'll never let her near the archive. She needs me." The second gentleman cuts Platt off with a growling sigh. He's standing too far away for me to see him, but I get a brief view from the waist down as he crosses in front of the fireplace. A thick wool-grey coat and tall boots crusted with salt. Sailor's boots, but far too fine for a seaman. They look like pieces of a uniform. There's a strangled silence. Platt is staring at the floor, his elbows on his knees. "I will fix this," he says at last. "You'd best." The decanter clinks again. Platt reaches out for the glass he's offered. "So," the second man asks, "who's the girl in the bedroom, if it isn't Miss Hoffman?" My heartbeat jumps, and I lean forward just as Platt settles back into his seat, his elbows perched on the armrest at such a jaunty angle that some of the liquor sloshes out of his glass. "You won't believe me if I tell you. Do you know Lord Henry Montague?" My fists close on the banister, the hard ridges of the wood jutting into my palm. "The English Earl?" the second man asks. "The same." Platt tips a finger over his shoulder toward the stairs above which he thinks I'm sleeping. "That's his child." "What?" "His kidnapped girl in the flesh. His lordship has been telling the whole peerage that his children were taken by slavers in the Mediterranean, but as it happens, they ran away." He takes a loud slurp from his drink, then lets it dangle between his thumb and forefinger. Can you imagine the scandal if the truth got out? My palms start to sweat against the banister. Monty and I both wrote to our parents when we first resolved not to return home after our tour. Me to a stifled existence and a loveless marriage. Monty to likely the same, but with a good deal more damage from our father done to him along the way. While we didn't exactly send a forwarding address, Father's lack of reply had led Monty and me to optimistically agree that he had decided to quietly blot our names from the family tree, bet his estate upon the new baby's son, and let us go our own ways. Apparently, he has taken a far more dramatic route, telling everyone we were taken by corsairs, and now Platt has the evidence to prove otherwise. In the parlour, I hear the second man say, "You're going to kidnap the daughter of a lord and blackmail him." "There is no kidnapping," Platt replies. "She came willingly. Miss Montague will help me find Joanna and see us married. Then we collect Sybil Glass's work and send the ladies back to England, and Montague's help will keep us afloat and see Herr Hoffman paid for his ships. See, all in my control, Fitz." I should be afraid. I'm certainly trembling. Platt knows who I am and will use me to find Joanna, and then plans to send me back to my father. All the while I'd thought us allies. I'd been no more than a pawn. And that has my vision spotting with anger. Anger for being used, for being thought foolish, for knowing that he'd likely never thought me capable of medical work. He just recognized my name. I need to leave this house at once and find Joanna and warn her that whatever love Platt professed to have for her is false, and that wedding is a sham. If it was Platt she ran from, I've led him straight to her door. She may think she's safe until the moment his jaws snap closed around her, all because of me. The conversation in the parlour has moved to sailing, and if I do not leave now, I may never get another chance. I slip back into my room and change from my nightdress into my tartan skirt and bodice. They're reeking from travel, the hem muddied up to the knees and the material crusty with sweat that has dried and then dampened over and over again as we went from stifling carriages to frigid station shops. My cloak is in a closet below stairs and I do not dare creep down for it, nor do I dare bolt into the cold without it. Instead, I strip the quilt off the bed and wrap that around my shoulders. Then, the much more complex task at hand, the actual escape. Ice on the window cracks when I shove it open. and a gust of wind pushes back so hard I almost lose my grip. The pelmet curtain is sucked out and the shutters clap against the side of the house. Below is an unhelpful drop to the street. No footholds, ledges, or loose bricks promised me by every fiction book I have ever read. Not even a convenient hedge to drop into. I have never been in possession of any particular acrobatic skills, and having the proportions of a corgi dog, do not anticipate a burst of natural athleticism to manifest just in time for me to scale the side of a building. I drag the window shut, then take a breath and an inventory. Resources at my disposal, very few. The sparse furnishings of this room, which would only be valuable if they could be subtly pushed out the window to create some sort of precarious tower. My knapsack full of nothing useful, stockings and underthings and a few books. I open the cupboard in the corner and find additional bed dressing and towels. The only idea seems to be taking up the role of the towered princess who grows weary of waiting for a knight. A rope made of her bedroom's drapery. The sheets tear quietly and braid easily. Years of keeping my hair in a long plait has finally done more than garner ire from fussier peers. I tear, braid, and braid again, then tie a firm knot around the rod hammered into the wall to hold the pelmet over the window. I sling my knapsack over my shoulder, test my weight upon the rope to be certain I won't fall to my death if the plaster is ripped from the wall. Well, death is rather grand. Perhaps fall to my own 2 broken ankles more accurately. Then I brace my feet against the casements and rescue myself. In the shelter of the bowing streets, the city is warmer than the countryside, and in spite of the snowfall, I've sweated through my scarf by the time I arrive at the diligence stop where my carriage from Stuttgart comes daily. I pay the link boy lighting lamps for me with coins left over from supper the night before, and then stand alone on the side of the street, the sludgy snowflakes trickling through clouds, making lace trimmings on my eyelashes, trying to think where I would go if I were a girl alone in the city, likely coming in the dark and cold. Which I am, I realise, but I try not to linger too long on that, lest my fear swallow me whole. I think of Joanna, everything I know of her, where I would go if I were her. I would go home to Stuttgart on my giant dog and my frilly dresses, is the first thing I think. But the Joanna I knew back in Cheshire had once slept for 3 nights in her father's stables in winter in hopes of seeing the snowy owl she suspected had made its nest in the rafters, had fallen through ice on a pond and pulled herself out before anyone could help her. A girl who had survived without a father and a mother who wouldn't come home when she lost him. Perhaps she is still made of that stone foundation I watched her build as a child. Perhaps it has not eroded with time but grown stronger, and been draped in silk and dog saliva. If I were Joanna, I think I would want somewhere Platt wouldn't find me. Not somewhere he'd expect her to stay, a guest house along the river with polished floors and silk sheets. I'd want to hide. I'd want somewhere tongues didn't wag and runaway girls weren't noticeable and men were not allowed. Somewhere like the boarding house I had called home in Edinburgh, and if I had a trunk in tow, somewhere nearby. The streets of the old town are steep and winding, a combination of cobbles so slick with snow it's almost necessary to take them upon all fours, and rough stairways just as treacherous, but with more sharp edges when fallen upon. The diligence stop shares its corner with a trinket shop advertising tarot readings, shut up and looking as though it hadn't been opened in weeks. A cobbler with faded velvet slippers in the window, and a cafe spilling violin music in the soft clink of a night that's crowded but not busy. I make my way inside, pecking through the tables populated with drunk artists staring into the bottom of gin bottles and painted ladies swooning around them. The man behind the bar is wiry and thin, with a thick moustache and a weathered kerchief tied around his neck. He's missing 2 teeth on the bottom, and he greets me with a rasping, wet cough before asking in a gritty voice, "You want something to drink?" "No, sir, actually," I make a big show of swallowing, willing myself to get tears in my eyes just for fullest effect. "It's my sister." "Your sister?" he repeats. "She's run away from home because her father is a tyrant who would see her shipped off to an asylum just for being a girl who reads books." I am poaching a bit of everyone's life story for this lie, but I press on. "She's come here to Zurich, and I know she's just arrived, and I'm trying to find her, and I think she came in here a few days ago, and please, sir..." The damn tears just aren't coming. I've spent so many years training myself to not show any sort of weakness, even under desperate circumstances, that my face seems utterly confused about what it is I'm asking it to do. I'm screwing up my nose and snuffling, and I think it looks more like I'm about to sneeze than trying to cry, for the bartender just looks confused. "Please, sir," I squeak, trying to put a teary wobble into my voice and overshooting, so instead it sounds like I just inhaled a mouthful of pepper. "If you know anything of where she might be, I just want to find her." He gives me a heavy-lidded look, still wiping endless circles around the glass in his hand. I likely could have told this bartender that I was looking for Joanna so I could murder her in cold blood and he wouldn't have cared. He doesn't seem to give a fig about my tragic, albeit fake story of my similarly tragic, though only because of their fakeness, tears. "Why would I know?" "Surely you see unfortunates in here begging for your help." "Unfortunates are the only kind we see here, madame." He coughs again, this time pulling up the kerchief around his neck to cover his mouth. The material is wet and worn, a striped pattern fading into piled cotton around the edges, like he often pulls it up. There are no blood stains, though, so if he's coughing into it often, it's not a consumptive hack. This close, I can hear his lungs cracking every time he takes a breath, like the spine of a book opened for the first time. Do you suffer from asthma, sir? I ask, before I can stop myself. He pauses in wiping down glasses, and for the first time, seems to pay me attention. Do I what? Asthma, I repeat, and hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's a word I learned from reading Dr. John Floyer's treatise and never said it outside my own head. A respiratory condition that causes laboured breathing and chest contractions. Don't know, he replies. Do you often have trouble breathing deeply? Most days. I take laudanum for it. Have you tried tar water and nettle juice instead? They're much better for a constricted throat and there's less risk of dependency. Less expensive too. Some quacks will tell you the boiled carrots help the lungs, but tar water has proved the most effective treatment. Any pharmacy should carry some, or make it up for you. He stares at me, trying to decide whether I'm making a joke, then coughs again, this time with his mouth closed so that his cheeks puff out. It's remarkable the difference a good deep breath can make, I offer. He huffs, presses his fist to his chest and says, She's really your sister, is she? When I nod, he says, We get lots of unsavoury types in here looking for girls who don't want to be found. Do I look unsavoury? You've got no cloak. That makes me unfortunate, I should think. He huffs again, wiping his nose on the back of his hand. When we get girls wandering in, I send them to Frau Engel's near the chapel. She's a boarding house for waywards. The only one you can walk to from here. Your sister may be there. You remember a girl with... We got a lot of girls, he interrupts, and I send them all to Frau Engel. Thank you, sir. I start to leave, but he calls to me. What was it? Tar juice. I turn in the doorway. Tar water and nettle juice. I hope it helps. He nods. I hope you find your sister. Frau Engel is similarly unmoved by my tragic story, though she has no illness I can diagnose to soften her heart, and make no attempt at tears this time. Could be anyone, she says. She's in her nightdress and cap, but the lit clay pipe between her teeth assures me I didn't wake her. Her large frame occupies most of the door. I get a dozen girls in and out of here each day. I don't know them all. She looks as though she's about to close the door in my face, so I throw out a preemptive arm against the frame in the hope that she will at least have enough pity in her heart not to crunch my fingers and say, Please, you must remember. She shrugs, her clay pipe bouncing between her teeth. All girls are the same. You want to pay me for a bed, you can wander around and try and find her yourself. But make the decision quick so I can get back to bed. I give her all the coins I have left without a clue what she's charging. I'm fairly certain it's too much for a single night, but she doesn't offer me anything back. Just harumphs, then gives me a tin plate, a cutlery set, and a blanket made of rough ticking that smells as though it were last used to rub down a horse. 2 girls to a bed, 3 if you can't find a spot. Washrooms on the 2nd floor. I'm not actually staying, I just want to find my sister. Still 2 to a bed, she says, drawing back so I can pass, then adds, And don't run off with my blanket. She says that like the withered carcass of material would have any value. There are so many holes, it seems like it would not even serve the most basic purpose of blanketness. And don't wake me again, she calls, as she galumps back to her room, a thin finger of smoke from her pipe lingering behind. The boarding house is packed above stairs and smells of mould and wax. Large pieces of the wallpaper are peeling away, leaving raw patches of damp wood that splinter when I brush them. I wander the 2nd and 3rd floor bedrooms, feeling invasive and downright criminal as I peer at all these sleeping girls, squinting through the darkness to see if any of them is Joanna. I'm not sure what I'll do if I find her. Wake her or sit beside her bed and keep vigil until morning? Or perhaps lie down beside her and sleep myself, though the question is rendered irrelevant as I finish my lap and find her nowhere. Most beds are full, and most with more than 2 girls. I see 4 knotted up together upon one small, stiff shelf, and all of them curled around each other like kittens. They're all thin and pale. One girl keeps coughing into her fist, trying to stifle the sound. Most are asleep. A few are gathered in one corner, whispering around a lamp and a deck of cards that they're using to tell fortunes. Another is sitting naked and shivering as she stitches up a seam in what must be her only dress. I almost give her my horse blanket to cover herself, though that feels as if it may do less good than my intentions would merit. On the 3rd floor, I find 2 girls wedged into the windowsill, looking out at the snowfall and giggling as they press their lips together. When they notice me in the doorway, one of them starts hissing in French I can't understand, simply for all the extra air in her words. When I don't reply or react, she unpeels herself from her friend and starts coming for me. I bolt, stumbling over the end of a bed and dropping my blanket cutlery bundle with a clatter that jolts half the room awake. And then there are more than a few girls who want to skin me alive. I dash back into the hallway, down the rickety stairs, and smash headlong into the girl coming out of the washroom, so hard that I nearly knock the lamp from her hand. Felicity. It takes me a moment before I recognize her. Joanna. Rory's giving me daggers.
More.
More? More? Please?
No, I think that this is a good place to stop. I'm sorry, you guys. I've got it all parceled out now. Got a rigid schedule to stick to.
Whatever. Fine taking notes from Frankie and being organized and giving us really fucking good cliffhangers.
Yeah, you're all my story bitches now.
I'll be your story bitch any day.
Oh, bitch.
Bitch. This is so fucking good.
So, Alexander Platt is not all that great, turns out.
More like Alexander Twat.
More like Alexander Platt. Good work, Rory.
Got him.
Who
Mazel.
could possibly have guessed?
We could have foreseen this. Turn around. Hi, Ian. Person who I've seen their face recently.
You made it back to Scotland, okay?
Yes, still technically alive. Woo! Yeah, we ended up going for an extremely. Oh, there's Rory. Rory will probably wave.
Just making the tea.
Yeah. We ended up going for an extremely long walk on the Monday. So I am feeling
Alright.
like very stiff today, but it's all good.
Awesome. I have been on one of Lisa's extremely long walks before.
How long is an extremely long walk?
I was just about to ask.
In this case, it was about 5 hours, maybe just over 5 hours.
Damn, that is an extremely long walk. I will completely agree with that.
Yeah, the problem is that Megan's partner, David, he's a very funny person, but sometimes you don't know whether he's joking or not. So I was like, how far up this mountain are we going? And he was like, all the way. And I was like, aye, sure, whatever.
And then you did.
And then about a third of the way up, I was like, we're probably going to turn back soon, right? Like, you can't want to go that much further, right? And like, just kept fucking going. And it just kept happening for hours. And then we got quite far up. We were walking up this like rocky like river. So jumping from rocks to rocks and wandering through bracken to get to the top of it, and like got 2/3 of the way up it, and then decided to go up this very steep hill with like a fence on the side, and it was hell, and I was like, thanks, I hate it, all the way up there, and like Megan and me were lagging behind. The like, yeah, it was a lot of fun though. Once
Where was this?
started going down the way.
Where were you?
We were. Oh, you'll know this. you'll
Was it,
maybe be.
was it
able
near
to tell.
Sheffield? Was it near Sheffield, was it?
Yes, it was. I can tell you. Just bear with me. Peak District, Edale.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we walked up along the river, basically that goes through Edale up to the very top.
Oh, up to Kinder Downfall. No, up to Grandsbrook Knoll.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. So we got to the top of those, like, you know how there's like when you get to the top of the hill, there's like a moor basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got there. It was big. Some amazing rock formations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like up Grindsbrook and then along to Jacob's Ladder and then down Jacob's Ladder to Upper Booth.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Glad you got a proper fucking holiday.
Right? Oh. Sorry, I'm plugging something in.
Andy, how was dancing in trees?
It was fun. We were filming some weird stuff today, pretending to be creatures.
That sounds really fun.
But we also started a lot later than we'd planned because there were some issues with the person that's organizing this thing. He was trying to get a car from the car club so that he could bring some more props and things, but the car was not charged, so he had to walk with, you know, decidedly fewer things. But it was fine because we did the tree thing, and then there's a cool little rock face that we could sort of play on. Very little. But yeah, interesting stuff.
That sounds super cool.
I got to be a weird creature with wibbly wobbly arms.
You're really good at having wibbly wobbly arms. That's ideal.
I know, it's great.
I'm so
Like,
glad.
Sort of crawling up the tree. Not like climbing awkwardly, but like just like slinking up. Completely different experience.
Sounds really
Tara, we were talking about like the skills required to look after a baby, and the like generally having had the experiences of being able to like, oh, I've changed a nappy, so I know how to change nappies before, that kind of thing. Yeah. We're gonna go visit Lisa and Jonas. Rory and I are gonna visit Lisa and Jonas soon so that we can get the baby skills.
Yeah, baby time.
Skillshare.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? You know what happens then? Because Lisa and Jonas visited us, and do you know how long after visiting us they went and made a schlatt?
There's no fucking chance of that. I came back and I was like, that's a cute baby. I'm so glad I'm never gonna have children. Take my uterus away from me immediately. I would hate that shit.
Yeah.
But like, I am more than happy to be around and help you and help any of my friends.
Yeah,
With
I
baby
am
guys,
too.
because I know that
And
they're so stressful, right?
I
Yeah,
love
and
other
they-
people's babies.
they were already wanting to at the time, rather than being definitely against the idea. So it was
Yeah.
just kind of funny. It was like when they told us they were going to have a baby, we're like, oh, when are you having the baby? Oh, okay. He was created about 2 weeks after you were with us then.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a tough time for them. They've got a screamer on their hands.
He's not been a screamer for very long. He hasn't, like, he's been really quite good natured up until quite recently.
Ah, right, yeah. That's fair enough.
Well, there are different patches. It was definitely a screamy patch in the early days as well.
Yeah. I think that also the lack of sleep is maybe like I know that for myself, I definitely do not want to have a baby because I think that the lack of sleep would significantly decrease the quality of my life. And also, like, why would I put all of that? Like, I don't want to have to put all of that responsibility on myself. But like, being able to take that responsibility on part-time to be able to help somebody else and be like, yo, let me take your baby for a walk, or like, that's
Yeah, absolutely. We need people like that around who aren't like, I feel like the only people who understand and are willing to try and help parents are too busy being parents themselves. I mean, around here.
Or you have like your own parents, I guess, like grandparents of the baby that are meant to be able to help quite a lot and can be like a huge resource. But what happens if you don't have that, or like have parents who are not able to take that role? It's just kind of awful.
If my parents were working this past year, my sisters would have been kind of fucked childcare wise if they wanted to homeschool their kids. My parents took on so much in terms of watching their kids and taking shifts and helping out on certain days with teaching and things, because, like, you know, takes a village and all that jazz. Like, yeah, they are super lucky that my parents not only are able to do that, but actually want to do that with all of their spare time.
Yeah, that's really nice. Our mums would also be very up for it, but you know, they're on the other side of the world and all that.
Yeah, I know that your mum was staying with you for a while, Tara. Is that right?
She was here for 3 months. With us for 3 months, and in Europe for 5 months. We went and traveled around Germany a bit with her. We took her to a dance event. It was great.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, she really liked it. She even danced a bit, but like it was in the Black Forest, so she just liked being in the Black Forest. It was funny because we were sharing a bedroom with her, and at one point she just walked into the bedroom while Michael and one of my friends were giving me a massage, and she just like never said anything about it.
It's fine.
Like, I don't know, like I would have said, oh wow, that looked good. How was it getting massaged by 2 people or just something? But she just like never mentioned it. I was okay. It was fantastic.
There was one spoonful where I did the massage class and you got to be massaged by 2 people, and it was freaking wonderful. And it was while I was dating Matt, and my parents still don't know that I'm polyamorous. And it was really interesting being asked about my trip and me being like, what can I say? I had a really nice time with friends. It was super cool staying in a castle and just like glossed over all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like, there was a lot of touching the whole time. I was very happy. I have nice friends who will cuddle me.
Oh, Yeah, my mum was actually not there one night in the middle of the thing, and we like slept in the dance room until 4 a.m. or something that night. It was great.
Oh wow!
That sounds so nice.
Yeah, with Araha as well.
Oh man, I missed that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Cuddle.
Those times.
I'm gonna go now. Good night, guys.
It was
Great.
nice to
Oh,
see
should
you.
we say
Yeah.
goodbye to the catch-up crew?
Oh
Oh.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Catch up crew. Bring layers.
Good advice.
Okay.
Okay. We love you, catch-up crew. Bye.
Bye.